Welcome back to the tomb, everyone. This is the Pharaoh, aka Ali. This episode is called Black Skin, White Frat. And a quick disclaimer that the views and ideas discussed in this episode is not an indictment of the UMass Greek life. And I'll go ahead and let my guests introduce themselves.
Hello all, I'm Oladipo Lagoon, good friends with Ali from college. We both met at UMass at Phi Sigma Kappa Alpha, where he was my big, and we had some pretty solid times together, and that's reflected in the fact that we're still friends to this day. So
yeah, we came looking for friendship and found brotherhood.
Blood.
Blood. Okay, so I guess we'll get into it. What made you join a white fraternity?
So for me in particular, it was a little bit different. So some people, typically you'll find people will join a fraternity their freshman year. And a lot of times, stereotypical, guy who joins a fraternity is, probably upper middle socioeconomic, upper middle class area, white guy, the type of picture, I would say. Upper middle class white guy who joins his freshman year because his entire life he's been talking about fraternities, and he's paying attention to frats in the South and all of the countries. He's really well established in just how Greek life works. But for me, I would say it was pretty much the opposite. I knew, of course, that frats existed, but it was never like a thing that I couldn't tell you what different fraternities there were, where they were located. I could probably tell you what an image of a fraternity, a person in a fraternity or sorority looked like to me, or at least from movies and whatnot. But I could never, I never pictured myself.
Yeah,
I didn't know the full extent of it, and I didn't know. I really just didn't have a really good view on it. I had a very narrow-minded view on it, and so I joined my sophomore year when a bunch of my friends who I had made my freshman year, we had decided to go into Greek life together, and one of our friends was at a fraternity at Phi Sigma Kappa. A few of our friends were in fraternities, but a couple of our friends actually were at Phi Sigma Kappa, and so in going to the parties and meeting some of the brothers and just knowing them, we decided together that it would be a good idea to join.
Okay. I would say that it was a little bit similar for myself. It's I knew about fraternities pretty much from movies and shows and shit like that. Going into college, one of my best friends, he lived right next to me freshman year, and he joined his fall semester. So from there, got to know a couple of the brothers, everything like that. And it never really popped into my mind that, oh, you should probably join. It was just a place to kind of go hang out with people, have fun. And then it was spring semester that I ended up getting a bid from them. And in my mind, wasn't really taking it too seriously. I just thought, oh, it's a nice place to hang out. It's bid, let me go see what this is about. And 5 years later, I graduated, still a brother. And it was definitely a learning experience throughout those 5 years, both in the class and also in the house, learning various different life lessons. Mm-hmm. So did you ever consider joining a Black fraternity?
So because I had already established my friend group from my freshman year, and going into, like I said, us just kind of deciding together it would be a good idea to rush a fraternity our sophomore year. Before I joined Phi Sig, I never really thought about it. Maybe here and there, but at that point I would have, completely changed my social group. And in college, that's not really that's not really the go-to. But after joining a fraternity, I definitely often wondered, like, what if I had, joined one of the Black fraternities on campus, or even if not like joining a Black fraternity, just like reached out and became, close to some different Black fraternities through in a similar way that we, reach out and meet other white fraternities, or I guess they're not white. They are white fraternities, but
Yeah, they
they're
are.
not classified as white fraternities. But so I definitely often think about it, like, what if we, got together, and maybe even if it was just the like people in Greek life who were Black, and just like not extend an olive branch, but kind of to that end, like, just showed, hey, like, we're all in this together, like, we're all Greek life,
Hmm. Well, I think that during, I guess during Greek week, they do try to, I will say that they do try to do that, that the Black fraternities, Black fraternities and sororities, Asian fraternities and sororities, and I think we have a couple of Latino Asian, Latino fraternity and sororities. So I think that they do reach out to them. I think that through some of the interactions that I've had with people within Black fraternities and sororities, it's more so like, oh, you only reach out to us during Greek week because you don't want to look racist. You don't want to look like you're excluding us. It's like, but before and after that, it's like there's really not that big of interaction.
collaboration. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and
that's kind of why I was saying, like, not the well, extend the olive branch, like some sort of, like, consistent relationship, because that consistent relationship is held throughout the major, like, UMass fraternities, the, Phi Sigs, the Sig Eps, the just all the fraternities and sororities that come together for Greek life consistently. There is that collaboration, there is that relationship. And so I think that there needs to be, or probably needed to be, more of a push to establish it, because, like you said, we had, I think, in my senior year, one of the it was an Asian women's sorority, and so they were one of our partners. But I didn't see them. They consistently matched up with groups, but we don't see them because, like you said, they feel like you're just reaching out to us because it's the Greek week, and it makes you look good to have these teams, like,
diversity.
yeah. But no, but they're not there, and
Yeah,
if they are there, it's very brief, and it just needs to be more established, I think.
yeah, because I think that there was only 1 year, excuse me, during Greek week where it was just one person from Alpha Phi Alpha, and he showed up to everything. And he was just, his thing was is that I've never actually came to one of these. Let me see how it is. He and I actually got along pretty well. All we did was drink when we showed up. But yeah, like that was the thing, and that was the only time when I actually saw someone from Black Greek life show up to Greek week, and yeah, it was kind of sobering. It's just like, why is it that we don't really see them that much? One, I will say that one thing is that they do tend to have lower numbers. Like there's one fraternity where I think there was only 3 active members, but it was more so of a regional thing. So there might be some people, some brothers in Springfield, some brothers elsewhere in the region um, where they might have more numbers, but actually attending the university, there was only 3. So I
Mhm.
think like that might be a part of it as well, but still, I think that there is a certain responsibility from the, we'll call it what it is, white Greek life. It's like you have the numbers, you're predominant on this university. It's like, so it's like you do need to make more of an effort than just say, hey, we're gonna be playing some volleyball and some games. Like you can join us if you want, but we're not gonna really pursue it per
Yeah.
se. Um, so when you did join Phi Sig, what were the reactions of your friends and family?
So my family didn't know for a while.
Was
My
that on purpose?
I mean, I just never. I wasn't gonna tell them. I was gonna be the one to tell them that I joined a fraternity because my parents are they're Nigerian parents, so they've got their own ways of like conservatism and just different things.
Mhm.
So I'm not. I was gonna bring that up for sure. But my dad, I think he found out because he was on Facebook and like someone tagged me or something. Someone like tagged me in a picture and he like connected the dots, and I was just like, yeah.
I
And
think
it wasn't a
that's probably me.
I mean, there was a time where I was definitely looking at my tagged photos and like taking care of it, but I think I just stopped caring. And then at that point, I was a little bit older, parents naturally after some time, and especially when you're not at home, they lax up a bit. So at that point my dad looked at it and he was just like, oh, like they know you're doing this, and my family was fine about it. They made their jokes, about like me drinking or different things, but
Mhm.
my friends in particular, they pretty much knew off the bat. They would visit me at college and whatnot. Friends at campus, well, friends from who weren't at UMass, but the friends at campus, they would also, they kind of got it. They were a lot of times either friends with the people that I was already friends with who joined with me, or they knew of them at least, so it wasn't a surprise to them.
Okay. So the friends that came up from not from campus, like they didn't really, you didn't get any type of flack or backlash about like, oh, why are you joining a white fraternity?
Not particularly. Um, in probably for the same reason that I, prior to joining college, didn't really like even conceive of fraternities. Like it wasn't a thing for them. It wasn't like a thing that we grew up with. Like I couldn't tell you anyone who I knew was in a fraternity before I graduated high school, for
Gotcha.
sure. So it wasn't like a thing for like my town or people that, or at least from my perspective, maybe some other groups were thinking about that, but at least from my friend groups, and I was friends with like a decent amount of people throughout high school. So, or come in contact with a decent amount of people, I should say. So like, it never came up. So I think it was more of like just where I grew up. It just wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, they kind of were just like, oh, like you're in a fraternity, you're at a place where you've got like this group of guys who you just like kind of hang out with, like that's pretty dope. So they just kind of past it. But how about you?
Uh, yeah. I did get a little bit of backlash, and actually, it was more so from my black friends. Like when I told my dad about it, he wasn't actually taken back by it, which he was the one that I was kind of more so worried about. It's like, oh, I have to go and tell the person who grew up in the era of Malcolm X that I joined a white fraternity. It's like, let me get a helmet. But no, he actually, because he gave me an interesting perspective. And his thing was, it's like, oh, well, at least you joined a true Greek organization, which made me think, I was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, so he does not have a favorable position on black fraternities and sororities. And his thing was, is that it's like, well, with these white fraternities, it's like they call themselves Greeks. It's like that's a part of the race of which they come from. They started their fraternities and sororities. It's like, but for black people to be walking around and calling themselves Black Greeks, that's kind of a contradiction. It was like, so he was more accepting of the fact that I joined an organization that was consistent with the history versus like a black fraternity or sorority. Is like, and he said it to me frankly. Is like his standpoints on it is it's another form of black tribalism. And I know a lot of people are going to be listening right now and get kind of heated about it, but I would just ask you to take a step back and just kind of think about it. like really take a step back and think about it. But that was from my family. My mom was kind of just like, oh, okay, just be safe. That that was her thing. My sisters really didn't didn't really care that much. Probably similar to you, just got a couple of jokes. Um, but uh, there was one instance where I told I told my friends, and this was a group of Black women that I joined Phi Sig, and we ended up getting into it. Well, I got into it with one of them in particular, and she pretty much just said, "Oh well, you know what? That makes sense because you act white and you talk white, all of this, and it's like you're not really a brother. Like you don't have the swagger." Da, 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 da. It's like, you know what? These Black fraternities wouldn't even want you. It's like, wow. It's like, okay. It's like, this is just a decision that I decided to make for myself. And it's not even like I'm trying to just surround myself with white people. It's like, I have friends that are in there. I like to hang out with them. The activities that we do is fucking fun. It's like, so it's like, I don't, and the funny thing is that she said, oh, the Black fraternities don't even want you. When I went to the expo during the spring, there was actually a Black fraternity that approached me and asked me if I wanted to join. The only reason why I didn't was because their pitch was off. The first thing they came up to me and said, listen, brother, we need to educate you about yourself, brother. It's like, oh, hell no. It's like,
You
it's
need
like,
to educate you about yourself, my brother.
we need to teach you about
No,
your history. And I'm just sitting there, it's just like, what makes you think I don't know about my,
yeah,
like, for you to start off like that is like, that just came from a very arrogant um, position for me. So that's what kind of turned me off to that fraternity, which is very interesting because once I went to Tuskegee and I was talking to some people in Greek life, they actually said that they could see me being in that fraternity. It's like I don't know what you're trying to say about me. I don't know if you're saying that I'm arrogant, but it was definitely interesting. But going back to that story is that I did get a lot of backlash for it, and it was, yeah, it's like it was from our own people, and having that person say that is like it didn't hurt me at all. I grew up with Black and white people telling me that I talk white, I act white, do all this, so it wasn't anything new. It was just like this is the hill that you're willing to die on about someone else's decision. So
yeah.
it was definitely interesting and gave me a different perspective about how people will view you when you're Black in a white fraternity, from white people and also from Black people.
I mean, you definitely can be looked at as like the outsider to the Black community. Like, I don't want to say the quote unquote coon, but like some people would definitely say, like, some people who kind of just use that word liberally probably would say that. I would say,
Oh yeah, she called me a coon.
uh-huh. And it's actually funny. I don't know if you know Sam J. She's a comedian who.
She actually came to the house
Which house?
to Phi Sig. Sam J. We
She
had
did?
we had a comedy show in the basement, sanctioned. It was a sanctioned comedy show,
Mm-hmm.
and she actually came. She came to the house. She performed at the house.
That's so funny. So Sam J is, for those who don't know, Sam J is a Black lesbian comedian who's absolutely hilarious. And she's written for SNL, but she's not like the typical SNL comedian. She recently came into some flack because she made a joke about trans people who are trans, I should say. But it wasn't like a transphobe. I don't, at least from my perspective, it wasn't a transphobic joke. It was more of just, it was more of a person who is transgender being in a joke than it was like directed at that person. But regardless, so she had this show that just started on HBO recently called Pause, and in it, the first episode she talked about like coons and just like how people like liberally use that, when like back in the day, it's like, are you dancing and shucking and jiving for white people, or are you dancing and shucking and jiving for black people? And if you're dancing and shucking and jiving for white people and like really like losing like your sense of community,
Mhm.
then obviously you're coon. But in other words, like if you know what I mean, like there was a difference between the performativeness and usually a difference between how that is displayed.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because people will use that against, black people who are in white fraternities if they don't even know them. And it's like, come on, at least like talk to me about my life, man. Like learn my story.
Yeah. And they just look at it as, oh, there's one or two black people in there, they definitely must be the token. Or it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like that person definitely must be whitewashed or whatever. It's projecting themselves onto that person. It's just
Yeah.
like, just because, and I found this very interesting, is that um, there are some people that I've found out that there are some black people that surround themselves with black people because honestly, if they move within white spaces, they're not secure within themselves to stay themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Is that they'll let all the other external influences influence how they're supposed to act, well, not how they're supposed to, but how they act, and the things that they allow happen to them. Versus like someone, I'll say someone like myself, is that I grew up in a predominantly white area, predominantly white school, went to UMass Amherst, which is a PWI, which is a predominantly white institution, joined Phi Sig, predominantly white, and I still maintained my Africanness about me. And
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there are some people that would could walk in those types of environments and lose a part of their Africanness because they haven't, some people haven't had what I had growing up, where I had a father and a mother that pretty much hammered into me. It's just like, this is who you are. It's like, you can explore everything else, that you do whatever you want to do, but at your core, this is who you are. And with that, I've been able to walk into different areas, in different environments where if it's predominantly white, it's like sometimes when you see black people walk into predominantly white environments, they not even code switch, but they just become a whole different person. It's like, it's not even
Mm-hmm.
code switching. It's just, they just take off one mask and put another one on. It's just like, this is who I am. It's like, but if you're secure about who you are, why change up?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that insecurity, and like, because in that insecurity, there's some sort of fear, and
Mm,
it's fear of the unknown, or fear of the past. But at the end of the day, you can't a lot of times you can't see something that you've never experienced before, and it's like a lot of those people, at a young age, their foundations may have been like they had never even been in a room with all white people until like maybe like middle school or something, you know what I mean, or even high school, or maybe even college, maybe even UMass itself. So I think when you kind of reach that, like that moment, you get some sort of shock,
yeah,
and like for me and you, like you were saying, you grew up in a predominantly white town, and you were still able to retain like your Africanness. I grew up in an African church. Like I was surrounded by black people every Sunday from my pretty much my birth until college, and then beyond that, I had a lot of family who lived in. I have like a very big family who lives in like New York, and like I would consistently be surrounded by my family. You know what I mean? So I've kind of gotten the experience of both the worlds in a sense. So from my youth, I was always comfortable in both environments, and for me, it wouldn't be as much of a culture shock as it would be for some other people.
yeah, definitely. Um, so I guess so. I mean, we've already said the R word, so we might as well keep going. Uh, so from the brothers, have you experienced any like overt or covert racism?
Um, when you say overt and covert, can you define that?
So obviously, like not if someone I don't believe any of the brothers would straight up just be like, "Hey, nigga," uh, but something like overt is just like, oh, like it's like, oh, like black people do this, and like more covert is, I would say. So I'll give you an example of a covert one. Is when I was social, one of the times I tried to broaden our horizons and like get different sororities to have mixers with us. And at one point, I tried to reach out to a black sorority, and with that, I ended up like expressing that idea to some of the brothers. And one of the brothers ended up saying to me, "It's like, oh, I don't want them to come. They're just gonna want to dance." Covert.
Wow.
Yeah,
What does that even mean?
I mean, we know what it means. We know what it means. It's like, oh, all the black girls want to do is just come and dance and shake their ass.
Yeah.
When in actuality, like, first of all, the brothers don't
And
actually
that,
dance with anybody.
true. I mean, maybe that's why they're scared.
Like, I could have respected them more so if they straight up just said it. It's like, oh, it's like I feel like I don't know how to talk to black women. At
And that
least if
would
you,
be a normal thing.
yeah,
That would, you know, make sense. It's literally like I just said with the, you know, black people not growing up with white people. Like white people also don't grow up typically in areas where they're predominantly black people. They get that shock, and especially as the majority of the population, like that must be very unsettling to them in some sort of way. And it, but I don't think that should be an excuse for not even like understanding like why not just like meet up with this fraternity sorority and have a mixer like you do with every other sorority.
yeah. I mean, because it's like you said, is that it's like they are uncomfortable about that, and I could 100% understand if they just said like, "Hey, we're kind of uncomfortable about this." I would have said, "You know what? Okay, fine." It's like then we can have a further conversation about this, but if you like, we're still gonna have the mixer. But because of the reaction I got from some of the brothers, I just ended up can't like not even reaching back out to them. Well, I reached out to them and told them something like, oh, like we couldn't do it, X, Y, and Z. It's like because from that just covert and just ignorance is that I did not want any black woman to come to the house and have a brother like talk out the side of their neck, and then it's like just a bad situation all around.
Sure. Or even like no brothers show up and then you invited all these women who are
Oh,
expecting,
I would
you know,
strangle them.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like, and it's possible. I mean, in my senior and even junior years, there were definitely times when mixers wouldn't go well because the brothers had this, you know, view of that sorority and they were just like, you know, I'm not even gonna waste my time going. And it's like, come on, man. Like, it'd be one thing if there's like an exam, but
Yeah, but you're just choosing not to go because you have a certain perception of that sorority, and it's like first of all, bro, know your worth.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, but that's what I mean from overt and covert. So like, have you experienced anything like that within the fraternity?
So I've definitely experienced both, but I can't give you like a straight example of one.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, you know, the covert like this is how I assume black people act, so it is law kind of thing kind of happens more often than the overt. Um, and a lot of that I would call out in the moment, like, hey, like what you're saying is some bullshit, and you know it, because you know that if there are you know that if there were other black people in this room, you wouldn't say that because you don't believe it. You don't wholeheartedly, like to your core, believe that that is a thing.
Mhm.
That's something that you've picked up along the way, and you're making it's more of a joke to you than even truth, but you're
Yeah.
gonna go along with it anyways. And I would say, like I said, in those moments, I would shut it down because you know, at least there's kind of that, I'm the quote unquote representative in the room. Like I have to at least make sure that if someone else or the next black person that this person is going to see, like they know, at least in this instance, like that's not anything to joke about.
Yeah. So you said something. You said you're the representative in the room, which is actually like my next question. It's like, at any point, did you feel like a mascot within the fraternity?
Well, I think there's a difference between the representative of the room and the mascot. The mascot, I would say, is when other people, when white people might view you and look at you as like the token, like you're just our like black guy who's here, like, or but the representative in the room, I would say, would come from internally, like I have a respect for my community, and I'm going to make sure that when you talk about my community, you put that respect in there at the very
Mhm.
least. But I wouldn't say I felt like the mascot, or if I did feel like the mascot, I definitely made sure they knew that I was not the mascot in that moment.
Gotcha. Yeah. I completely. I'd say that I guess for me, I kind of felt there are times I felt like both.
Mhm.
Well, at time, well, I was always the representative. I like the way that you put it. It's like like I represent my community, and like if you put some respect on my name, it's like
Exactly.
so. You quit playing with my name, but so I do. I like the way that you put that, and I will say that like there were there were like some nights. There was actually a lot of nights where if there were people like walking around there trying to find a party, um, and some black people come up to the back door, they would go inside and try to find me
Mhm.
to talk to them. And it where it came from, I think it was just like, oh, like we don't know, like literally, I think it was we don't know how to talk to black people. We know how to talk to Ali, but we don't know how to talk to black people.
Mhm.
And the fucking irritating thing about it is that because of the fact that I worked at the rec center, a lot of people knew me. A lot of people knew my face. So when I would come out, they'd be like, "Oh, Ali from the rec center." I'd be like, "Fuck, they were right. I do know them." It's like, but it's not. It's not because all black people know each other. It's because of where I work,
Yeah.
and it was part of it was that, and then also part of it was the fact that like I chose to be out there because of the fact that I understood that they don't know how to talk to black people. Because there was one time when I was outside and there was a group just looking. No, it was two people. Two black men were just looking for, like walking around looking for a party. I was just outside, just chilling. They come up to me and it's just like, oh, it's like, are you guys doing something? It's like, oh, like maybe, like yeah, like I think we might be having a little something. And then with the authenticity in his voice, it's like, do you guys let black people in? And like that, yeah, that took my head for a whirl because it's just like, yeah, like of course. But then I had to think about it. It's like they probably had the same perception of white fraternities that people get from the movies and TV shows. Because, like you said, it's like middle upper class white guys. It's like,
Mhm.
and most of them tend to uh, have a certain view of black people.
And
So
even more than that, like combine that with so maybe they've experienced that at other fraternities. Combine those experiences with what you had just said, where the brothers came to you because they were like, we don't even know how to talk to black, like we don't know what even to say to black people in the space. Like, if there's no Ali, who are they going to go to? There's no one. There's no representative. So they're probably just going to be like, nah, man, we're at capacity. Like,
Yeah.
on to the next guy. And so if you have that reaction so many times, you're just going to assume that people don't even like there's some sort of, I mean, and there is some sort of like race barrier there to a certain point.
Mhm. Yeah, and yeah, it's just it's kind of that, I'm not gonna lie, that question kind of fucked me up. Like it was like when he asked me that, I was just like, wow. It's like, because it also made me think, it's like, so that's the perception that you have of a place where I joined, and like people that I call my friends. It's like, damn. So I
Yeah.
guess like after that, I kind of just pretty much stayed outside if we were having something, like, because I, whether it was right or wrong, I wanted to change the perception of that, because for the most part, it's like there are some brothers that I had my reservations about, but for the most part, it's like I don't think that they were. I don't think that they were intentionally racist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they had ignorance and blind spots where I kind of tried to teach them if it was a teachable moment, but most of the times it's like they don't want to listen to anything. But well, that's actually what I was going to ask, is that, do you think like your presence within the fraternity helped change some of the perspectives of brothers?
My presence changed the perspective of brothers from the outside in.
What do you mean you say outside in?
Like other,
No, not external. I'm saying internal, like the brothers, with like change the perspective of the brothers. Like if, like you said, like some brothers might have never grown up around black people, but have a an idea or a formulation of what a black, like how black people act or how black people are.
I would definitely say so. Like I've definitely met brothers who told me that they didn't know a lot of black people before they even went to school, or if in some cases like they've never even met a black person, or I was one of the first black people they've met. And also, like, I would say I'm a pretty solid guy just in general. Like, not even amongst black guys. Like I think I would say like
You're a good
not that
person.
I not that I wouldn't hurt a fly, but like if you don't give me if you don't try and hurt me, I won't have any reason to hurt you. So we're
Yeah.
gonna be cool. So I think in that sense, like of just a person, I think I've changed people's perceptions. I would have to say.
Have you, like, within the house, have you had one of those like conversations where you've sat down with the brother and like had to really educate them about some of the shit that they were saying? Like those hard conversations that everyone's fucking talking about.
I would definitely say I've had the hard conversation. Probably less about what they were saying, but more of like a person's actions. I
Mm.
would say, or like even it's tough because like I said, I'm not really like I don't really hold on to like negative memories a lot. Like in terms like if there's a situation where something like bad happens to me, it's not that I push it away, but like I just I just get past and get on to the next thing
Mm-hmm.
to a certain point. So I don't really hold on to like those kinds of instances, or if I do, it's more of because someone else has brought up the moment, and I'm like, oh, like jogging my memory kind of thing. But I've definitely had that I've definitely had that conversation with brothers, or similar conversations with brothers where I had to sit them down and be like, nah, what you're thinking is completely like bullshit. Like, and there's no other way to say it. Like, what you're thinking is bullshit, and here are the reasons why, and we're gonna talk about it. But if you can't give me any reasons that you feel this way, or your reasons are bullshit, guess what? It's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, if you it's what it really comes down to is what you're saying fact. If it's not fact, where does that come from? And if you can't give me a reason, either it's because you made that shit up, or you know somebody who put that on you, and you just believing it because that's what you grew up with.
Yeah. You're just carrying someone else's negativity.
Mm-hmm. And just like lies at the end of the day, like you're at the end of the day, you're carrying something that's not true, just not true or pure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To a certain point, like, and that negatively affects you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I can say that for myself, I've had well, first of all, you're a better person than me because I hold on to those memories. Because I need to be able to bring them up if I need to educate someone.
I mean, I wouldn't say I don't remember, like, because I'm talking to you, like me and you, our memories of Phi Sig, like I wouldn't have any negative memories. But if I'm talking to somebody who an instance like that happened to, I'm gonna remember like, oh, me and you had to sit down, maybe even a few times,
Yeah.
and figure out where you're coming from. Because
Yeah. Hey, all of our memories are good ones. Yay.
recently,
But I mean, I guess two instances that stuck out in my mind, and I think one, the person might just watch too much Fox News. This was when, like, with the Mike Brown, wasn't even a trial. Like, it was, yeah, it went to trial. No, they didn't indict him, or they found him not guilty. Which one?
I believe they found him not guilty.
Okay, damn, I should probably know this, but hashtag bad black person. So
Bad guy.
okay, so it was the Mike Brown trial. So when the verdict came out, not guilty, and people started protesting, some people rioted, some people looted. One of the brothers was talking about, was like, oh, why are they burning down their own community? It's like, this is no way to protest. It's like, bruh, it's like, I don't think you fully understand what you're saying. It's just like, you don't understand the historical trauma that Black people have. It was like, so when you keep seeing high profile case, no charge, high profile case, no charge, it's like, at some point people are just going to get fed up. And I think the George Floyd incident is a perfect example of what happens when people get fed up. They set the fucking precinct on fire. Mm-hmm. And I know people will probably say it's like, oh, well, that didn't influence whether or not they were going to indict the officers. It's like, you can believe that if you want to, but I guarantee, like, white supremacy and racism only cares about two things: loss of property and loss of life, white life. Once you start burning stuff down, they're losing property. Mm-hmm. That forces their hand to do something. And I think many times is that we as Black people, we tend to just accept the bare minimum to make us stop, not to improve the condition. But that's a whole nother episode. And then the second time that I had to have a conversation, and it was with a brother and then one of his friends, and I'll tell you who it was after this, the actual person. But both of them, they thought they were some allies, super woke white people, da 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 da. And I just said to them, it's like, nah, there's a difference between racism and prejudice. It's like, Black people 100% can be prejudiced. It's like, but in terms of races, in terms of influence an entire racial group, we don't have the power to do that. And they lost their shit. They're like, how can you say that? It's like, oh, da, 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 da. Went to Webster and just was like, look at the definition of racism. It's like, and it's just so happened, it's funny now that they've actually updated the definition of racism. It's like, so it's just very interesting having those conversations, because you have some people that are very ignorant, watching Fox News, conservative, doing all that stuff. But then you'll have other people on the other side that they think that they're very liberal, that they're an ally, that they're woke. And it's like the ignorance is across the spectrum.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, it was definitely eye-opening seeing it come from both sides. So as you said in the beginning, that I'm your big, you're my little. For those of you who, well, most of you probably won't know, but within the fraternities, like, we have family trees, and Deeple and I are part of what's called the Black Tree. Lo and behold, guess who's in that tree? So I guess I have to ask you this: is that do you think it was beneficial having the Black brothers in the same family tree?
I think to a certain point it was really beneficial. I do think that having multiple black, like, quote unquote black trees, like multiple spots for black people to be in trees would be beneficial, because you kind of, instead of being in a centralized location, you're not only in a central location, but you're like spread out amongst. So it's almost kind of like that representation, because if you're in the black tree, you're gonna hang out with the black tree most often. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of times you're not gonna be in some of those other rooms where brothers are saying things, and you do need that as well. But I do think it was very beneficial having the black tree, and like having brothers who I could talk to about just, just normal stuff that was normal to me that may not have been normal to the other brothers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, because when I joined my big, I think it was even before I joined. It was, I think, when I got my bid and had something at the house. It was, I took him outside and I asked him straight up, was like, what is it like being Black in this fraternity? Because I needed to get that type of feedback before I actually like hopped into it. And from what my big and my grand big had to deal with, I'm glad that I didn't, because they actually dealt with a lot of shit. And but I guess just having that continuity of knowledge being passed down, it's just like, yo, this is the shit that I went through. It's like, da da da. It's like, someone someone does this, then like, here's like a proper way to respond to it. It's like, because not every time you need to start throwing fists, but there's a time when you need to. But yeah, and like, coming from that, it's like, that's why, like, when I took you as a little, it's kind of, I felt that responsibility as being like, oh, like, if he deals with anything, it's either we can sit down and talk about it, or it's like, I'm gonna handle it if he doesn't handle it, because we're not gonna, like, this is not gonna be the space that we're gonna reside in. So I think it was definitely beneficial, because if I didn't have my big, if I had someone else and I came to him with some of the problems that I got from like the older brothers, they would have just looked at me like, well, I think you're just overreacting, or I don't understand why you're mad. So pretty much just, no, it wouldn't be gaslighting, but pretty much just not having the knowledge to be able to converse with me. So yeah, it was definitely, it was I think it was beneficial. I think from the outside looking in though,
Mhm.
a lot of people are gonna be like, that's racist as fuck.
I mean, it's different if you. It's like if the black tree creates itself to a certain point, like
Which we pretty much did.
right. So if a black fraternity creates itself, is that racist inherently,
No,
or is that you know what I mean? Like,
but the concept of picking a little though is it's like, oh, someone that you like, someone that you vibe with. Whereas like if we had a black person who pledged, it was just like, oh, they're gonna be in that tree. Regardless of if that person got like if they get along or not, it's like they're gonna be in that tree. And it's like um, I will say that it has changed now. Um, because apparently we got more black people in the frat. So
you
uh, we couldn't
definitely do.
keep it all in one tree. The roots
But
just
it's
started spreading out.
exactly as long as the roots spread out, you know, eventually it'll more trees will be be grown
And
or have grown.
also just have to explain to the audiences that I actually end up having two littles. So I have Depot, and then I also have another little Kevin. And Kevin is not black. So for uh, he's black in heart, but
Kevin's Guatemalan,
yeah,
right?
he's Guatemalan.
Yes.
So it was we had the black tree and then the brown branch, and that's kind of how we spread out. And yeah, so it wasn't as if it's like, oh, you only had to have one and you only got black people. It's like nah, like I still had the we still had the flexibility uh, of picking other ones, but it was more so it's like I know just for me is that if there was a black person that came into the fraternity, I wanted to be their big because of the fact that I know that there is some bullshit they have to deal with, and I don't want them to have to deal with that alone or go to their big and then make their big have their big make them feel as though that they're losing their mind, because the worst thing to do is try to deny someone else's reality.
Very true.
But yeah, so here's a bigger question. So what are your thoughts about the social relationship between black and white Greek life? I know we kind of touched upon it, but
I think it's non-existent, to be honest with you.
yeah,
I don't think there's a bridge. I think there's like a town of white fraternity with like a chasm, and then the town of black fraternity, and then another chasm in the town of Asian fraternities and sororities. And
mm,
you know what I mean? Like I don't the only mixing I see is like quote unquote white fraternities and Jewish fraternities. So like at the end of the day, both two visually white fraternities.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. Is that I mean, from the example I gave earlier, is like I think it might have been my senior year that I that someone from the black fraternity actually showed up to Greek League, um, and it was actually pretty interesting because that person ended up getting in some legal trouble. But the story was is that it was I can't remember the actual month, but it was during the winter in Western Mass, so that'd be cold. So it was cold as fuck out. So he was um, walking back from the bars, lived I think in the townhouses or like towards that way, and he knew one person in one of the sororities, and like he stopped at that sorority to like call an Uber and kind of just warm up until that Uber came so he could just get a ride there. Um, he ended up walking into the sorority after, like, in a group of guys that were already walking in, and he was just kind of standing at the front door, just like on his phone, waiting for the Uber or Lyft. And then I guess one of the sisters were walking by, saw him, just like, "Who are you?" Told him his name. Mind you, he's in Greek life, just not the right Greek life. Told them their name. It's like, "Oh, I know so and so." It's like, "Well, she's not here. You need to leave." It's like, "Okay, I'm waiting for a Lyft and Uber. Like, can I just wait here until it?" It's like, "No, you need to get out." Started getting like aggro with them. Started caring.
Mhm.
Then it blew up into a whole thing. Like, multiple sisters came out. It's just like, there's a man in the house we don't know. It's like, bro told you who he was and who he knows here. It's like, why didn't you just reach out to that person?
Right.
His Lyft and Uber ended up coming, but before that, they ended up told him, it's like, "We're calling the police." They called the police, but by the time they showed up, he was gone. I was speaking to a person in a separate sorority about the interaction, and my thing was is that if he was in one of the white fraternities, it would not have been a problem. And the reason why it wouldn't have been a problem is because, oh, we know who that is because that's the black guy in so and so. And I think that illustration, like that whole incident was a perfect illustration of like the disconnect. Because I can guarantee that if that was me, it wouldn't have been a problem. It would have been, "Oh, that's Ali's on our forehead. Like, what the fuck?"
That's the black guy in Phi
Phi
Sig.
Sig. Yeah. It's like, but because of the fact that there's no relationship there, it's like, oh, it's some random black guy. And in a white sorority, it's like, it's not really good to be a random black guy in a white sorority house.
That random white guy, I'm sorry, the random black guy to the point where they called the police.
Yeah.
Like, do you
And
know how serious the situation should be where you're calling the police?
the thing is that from the story that I was told is that, like, at the beginning of it, he was not being aggressive at all. It's like, was he
Exactly.
drunk? Yeah, he was coming back from the bar, so you could tell that he was drunk, but he wasn't being aggressive. He only reciprocated. That's the thing what drunk people do. Drunk people reciprocate the energy that you give to them. It's like, so if someone's getting aggro and they're drunk, just talk to them calmly, and like eventually they will calm down. But that's what it was. So he started reciprocating that type of energy, and then that's when it started to get heated. And that's when House Mom and everything came out. It's like, but if he was in the right or white fraternity, it wouldn't have been a problem because they would have, the likelihood of them knowing who he was would have been close to 100.
They would have reached out to the sister at that point.
Yeah.
In my mind, what that comes down to is they don't believe that this person who's not in the fraternities they know knows this person who's in their sorority. They cannot even fathom it. And it's like, but we're all in Greek life. That should be even the most, like, that shouldn't even be like a question. Like, if, like, Greek, oh, possible.
Yeah.
Let's call her up. Let's contact her. Simple.
Yeah. And apparently the sister that he knew wasn't there. So they were like, "Well, she's not here, da 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 da." And this is like, well, just easy thing, just call her. Now, I don't know if he told them whether or not he was in Greek life, but it's like the social relationships would have given him that pass.
Mhm.
But at the end of the story is that so I actually ended up having to go talk to that sorority because the person that I was speaking to outside of that sorority ran and told them that I was calling them racist.
I'm dead.
It's like, did not call you guys racist. I just said is that this shows me the lack of social cohesiveness that the white Greek life and black Greek life have, because it elevated to the point where a white sorority called the police on a black man in Greek life.
Like one mixer would change that.
Yeah.
One mixer, you would be, oh, that was you were in the fraternity we had a mixer with on in March, and then like, oh yeah, I remember I came here, I met blah 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 blah, and then you have that connection immediately. I knew Rachel or Jen or whoever, and that, oh yeah yeah, and then you can start a dialogue, and then they can go, oh, give me a second, let me hit up Rachel or whoever.
Yeah.
There's
And
no connection.
I will say is that if you're gonna have a conversation with someone about them calling you, about you thinking that they called you racist, please don't use the card, well, we have black sisters in our sorority. Don't use that.
Nasty.
It's like, we have black and Asian sisters. We can't be. It's like, oh my God.
Anytime
Oh,
you say we have black people part of our group, you've lost.
yeah.
You've completely missed the entire point of the conversation.
Yeah. Because they weren't trying to hear that point of the conversation. Their thing was is that you called us racist. We're not. It's like, I didn't call you that. We can have a conversation about it, but this is what I said. That's like, and I laid this out. But I mean, in a right fashion, ended up getting banned from any of their activities.
Damn.
Yeah, it's like just was never invited to another one. It's like, huh, that's, if you don't want to show that you're racist, it's like maybe the person that kind of called you in your bullshit, you shouldn't ban them from everything. But that's neither here nor there.
That's wild.
Yeah. But do you have any like closing thoughts or anything like that?
Closing thoughts. Make the bridge. Connect between if everyone's in Greek life, there should be at least multiple instances where you meet all of Greek life. Simple.
Okay. And I would say it's like, and not specifically to our fraternity, but to any fraternities out there, it's like if you have diversity within your organization, don't just have it there for the sake of diversity. Actually have diversity of thought. Actually listen to first create a space where brothers that are not white can voice their opinions and you don't attack them for it. And then from there, actually take it in and grow from any type of feedback that you get, because if these are supposed to be your brothers, you need to act like it.
For sure. And sororities too.
And yeah, in sororities. I mean, I can't really talk on the sorority business because I haven't been in one. So
I mean, but they're not. If the white fraternities aren't connected to the black and Asian fraternities, the white sororities aren't really doing the same. Otherwise, because we all meet together.
Mm.
If one group isn't doing it in the whole, the other group is doing it in the whole.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I will say thank you again for coming and having me pick your brain, and also just listen to me rant. I think I ranted a little bit longer this episode than normal, but it was definitely a topic that needed to be discussed.
For sure.
So thank you again. Thank you again. And
Anytime.
everyone, that has been another episode of Tune Talks with the Pharaoh. I'll see you guys next week.
Peace.